The morning mist clung to the pine trees like whispered secrets, drifting slowly through the Colorado mountains as Jake Morrison stepped onto his cabin porch. His weathered hands wrapped around a steaming coffee mug, the ceramic warm against his calloused palms. For 3 years now, this had been his ritual. Wake before dawn, brew strong coffee, and watch the world come alive in the valley below. Jake had chosen this isolation after the divorce. After Sarah packed her things and drove away, leaving only tire tracks in the gravel and the echo of harsh words that still haunted quiet moments. The mountain didn't judge. It didn't ask questions or demand explanations. It simply existed, steady and unchanging, which was exactly what Jake needed. His nearest neighbor lived 12 miles down a winding dirt road. The town of Cedar Falls was another 20 minutes beyond that, a place Jake visited only when absolutely necessary for supplies. Most days, his only companions were the deer that grazed in his meadow and the hawks that circled overhead, riding the thermal currents with effortless grace. This morning felt different, though Jake couldn't say why. The air seemed heavier, charged with something he couldn't name. He sipped his coffee and scanned the tree line, his eyes following the familiar contours of ridges and valleys bathed in golden sunlight. Then he saw it. Something pale caught his attention on the roof of old Henderson's abandoned cabin, about half a mile up the slope. Jake squinted, raising one hand to shield his eyes from the morning glare. The Henderson place had been empty for over a decade, ever since the old prospector died and his family decided the remote property wasn't worth maintaining. Jake went inside and returned with his binoculars, the heavy field glasses his grandfather had carried in Korea. Through the lenses, the scene came into sharp focus, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. A woman hung from the edge of Henderson's roof, her body limp and motionless. Long blonde hair cascaded down, catching the sunlight like spun gold. She wore a simple white dress that fluttered slightly in the mountain breeze. Even from this distance, Jake could see that something was terribly wrong. Without hesitation, he set down his coffee and strode to his truck, an old Ford pickup that knew these mountain roads better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. The engine turned over with a familiar rumble, and Jake guided the vehicle up the narrow track toward Henderson's place, his heart pounding with each passing second. The dirt road to the cabin was overgrown, branches scraping against the truck sides as Jake pushed through. When he finally reached the clearing, he killed the engine and stepped out, the morning air suddenly feeling cold against his skin. The cabin stood before him like a ghost from another era, its log walls weathered gray by years of mountain storms. Weeds had grown up around the foundation, and several windows were boarded over with plywood. But Jake's attention was entirely focused on the roof, where the woman still hung motionless. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing off the surrounding trees. "Can you hear me?" No response came, only the whisper of wind through pine needles and the distant call of a mountain jay. Jake circled the cabin, looking for the safest way to reach her. The building had a stone chimney on one side, with enough handholds to make a climb possible. As he prepared to scale the wall, something on the cabin's front door caught his eye. Burned into the wood, as if branded with a hot iron, were 2 words, Apache Lover. Jake stared at the crude lettering, his mind racing. The words spoke of old hatred, old wounds that ran deep in these mountains. He'd heard the stories from longtime residents, tales of conflicts between settlers and native tribes that had played out generations ago in these very valleys. But there was no time to ponder the message's meaning. The woman on the roof needed help, and Jake was the only one here to provide it. He began his climb, using the chimney stones for leverage, his boots finding purchase on the rough log walls. The roof was steep, but Jake had spent enough time maintaining his own cabin to navigate the slanted surface safely. When he finally reached the woman, he knelt beside her carefully, afraid of what he might find. She was breathing. Her pulse was steady beneath his fingers when he checked her neck. But she was unconscious, and Jake could see no obvious injuries. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, with delicate features and skin that suggested she wasn't accustomed to mountain living. "Miss," he said softly, gently shaking her shoulder. "Miss, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, then opened slowly. Blue eyes, clear as mountain lakes, focused on Jake's face with confusion and fear. "Where?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Where am I?" "You're on Henderson's cabin, up in the Colorado Rockies," Jake said, keeping his voice calm and steady. I'm Jake Morrison. I live down the valley. What's your name? Emma, she said, struggling to sit up. Jake helped support her, noting how she winced as if everything hurt. Emma Whitehorse. I don't remember how I got here. The last name gave Jake pause. Whitehorse. He'd known a few families by that name, members of the Ute tribe who had deep roots in these mountains. Looking at Emma more closely now, he could see the subtle features that spoke of native heritage mixed with European ancestry. Do you remember anything about last night? Jake asked gently. Emma closed her eyes, pressing her palms against her temples. There were men. Angry men. They said terrible things. They grabbed me from my car when I broke down on the highway. I remember being dragged, and then. She shuddered. Then nothing until I woke up here. Jake felt anger building in his chest, a cold fury at whoever had done this. The burned words on the door suddenly made sickening sense. Someone had brought Emma here as a message, a cruel reminder of old prejudices that should have died out long ago. We need to get you down from here and to a hospital, Jake said. Can you move okay? Emma tested her limbs gingerly, then nodded. I think so. Just sore and dizzy. Getting down proved easier than climbing up. Jake went first, then coached Emma through each step, ready to catch her if she slipped. When they finally reached solid ground, he helped her to his truck and cranked up the heater. The hospital's in Cedar Falls, Jake said as he started the engine. About 40 minutes from here. We should call the sheriff too. Emma was quiet for most of the drive, staring out at the mountain landscape with troubled eyes. Finally, she spoke. Why did you help me? You don't even know me. Jake considered the question as he navigated a sharp curve. My grandfather used to tell me that the mountains don't care what color you are or where your family came from. They treat everyone the same, harsh if you're careless, generous if you show respect. I guess I learned that lesson. A small smile touched Emma's lips, the first he'd seen from her. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. He was, Jake agreed. He also taught me that when someone needs help, you help them. No questions, no conditions. At the hospital, Emma was examined and found to be suffering mainly from exposure and shock. The sheriff took her statement and promised to investigate, though Jake could see the skepticism in the lawman's eyes when Emma described her attackers. 3 days later, Emma appeared at Jake's cabin door. She'd cleaned up and looked much better, though shadows still lingered in her blue eyes. I wanted to thank you properly, she said, holding up a small wrapped package. And to return something. Inside the package was a hand-carved wooden eagle, its wings spread in flight. My grandfather made this, Emma explained. He said eagles see the whole mountain, not just the valley they're flying through. I thought, maybe you'd understand what that means. Jake held the carving carefully, feeling the smooth wood warm under his fingers. Your grandfather sounds like he was wise too. He was. He also taught me that kindness has a way of coming back around, like water flowing downhill. Emma paused, looking out at the mountain vista. I'm moving to Denver for work, but I was wondering, would you mind if I wrote to you sometimes? I'd like to have a friend who understands mountains. Jake smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in months. I'd like that very much. As Emma drove away, Jake stood on his porch holding the wooden eagle. The morning mist was lifting, revealing the full majesty of the peaks beyond. For the first time since Sarah left, the mountain didn't feel quite so lonely. Sometimes, Jake realized, the mountain sent exactly what you needed, when you needed it most. And sometimes, helping someone else find their way down was the first step toward finding your own way home.